Hello Keto family, welcome back. I am super excited about today's video. I received a request for a coconut flour bread recipe, and after a good many failures, I have hit upon the perfect recipe. If this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe down below and hit the bell icon so you don't miss upcoming videos. Let's get cooking, guys. Alright guys, here we are. Before we get started, I do want to mention that the base recipe that originally I got most of this from is going to be down below in the description. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to have a breakdown of the macronutrients. Now, the very first time I made this bread, it did not turn out good. I did make plenty of changes to it. As you'll see, so if you try and compare what I do versus what the actual link is, it's not the same, so don't tell me you did something different, because I know I did something different. I did it different on purpose, okay? So just bear with me. I'm going to show you what I did. I've made this recipe 3 times, and the last 2 times it has come out absolutely perfect. The first time was not so perfect, and then I did some alterations to it, okay? Alright, so to get started here, first thing we're going to do is put that to the side. Alright, I have here egg whites. I've already separated 7 eggs. I got the yolks here. We'll save those for later. I got the egg whites here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop them into my stand mixer, and we're going to beat the devil out of these egg whites, okay? You want these to be fluffy. You want them to have stiff peaks forming. It'll take a couple minutes. You can do this with a hand mixer. It's just you're going to have to stand with your hand for a couple minutes. Your arm's going to get tired. I have a stand mixer, so that's what I'm using today. This is not some big expensive stand mixer. I think I got it for $50 off of Amazon. So, alright guys, so I'm going to beat the devil out of these eggs. I'll be back with y'all in a few minutes. Alright lovelies, we are back, and I have beat the snot out of these eggs. We have some stiff peaks in here, which is great. It's just what we want. You don't absolutely have to beat your eggs, so if you don't have a mixer of some sort, you can leave them as is, but I found that beating them to stiff peaks helps create a little bit lighter, a little bit fluffier bread, because if you've ever made coconut flour bread before, you know it has a tendency to be just a little bit more dense than almond flour bread, and I don't really care for that denseness. I want to make it as light and as fluffy as possible, and so this will help do that for me. Alright, so I got those all beaten out. I'm going to set that to the side for now. We're just going to leave them. Alright guys, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to mix our dry ingredients together. In here I've already sifted in a cup of coconut flour. Always make sure sift your powders and your flours. It's very important. You don't want any clumps in there. That's not a pleasant experience. I've got a teaspoon of pink Himalayan sea salt, and I have a teaspoon of no salt. The no salt is not required. I put it in just about everything I make because of the potassium content. I can't taste it in my stuff, and it just really helps with the potassium. I got 2/3 of a cup of ground flaxseed meal. I'm running out of room on my counter. There. I have 4 teaspoons of baking powder. I got 3 tablespoons of granular monk fruit. You can use any sugar substitute or sugar if you want in this. Different sweeteners sweeten differently, and this is really a sweeten to taste kind of deal. In most loaves of bread, I'll do 2 tablespoons. This one I did 3 in it. It's just do it to taste, do it how you like it. Start with 1 or 2, and just make it from there how you like it. Alright, in here is what I found to be the secret ingredient when making a coconut flour bread. This is arrowroot powder. I get mine off of Amazon. You can get a pretty big bag fairly cheap. I think it was like $10. If you don't have arrowroot powder, I find that the coconut flour tends to be very dense. So this is a great addition to it. In case I didn't say, that was half a cup. Don't remember if I said that or not. Mixer. Alright, now I'm going to mix all this together, and you got to be really careful with that arrowroot powder because it's very powdery. You will be wearing it. I can't tell you what I look like after I finished pouring it into the bowl. I was like poofed all over white powder, so just stir it very gently so you don't get it all over yourself. There you go. Once it's incorporated, you can go to town on it. Alright, so I got all those powdered ingredients together, mixed in, and what I'm going to do to make my life easier is I'm going to transfer the egg whites to another bowl just temporarily. Look at that, these things are beat solid. It stayed in a bowl shape. which is great. Alright, set this to the side. And I have a rag here. I'm just going to wipe this out real fast with a rag. Aren't these cute? I made these out of flour sack cloths. I found these flour sack cloths at Sam's Club. It was really cheap. It was like $10 for a pack of them. And I made 40 of these dish rags, kitchen rags, whatever you want to call them, out of them. In just one evening with my sewing machine. That's the coolest thing ever. I'm trying to be a little less wasteful in the kitchen, so I'm replacing paper towels with these. And it's worked out really well for me so far. It's been about a week. Alright, just get that wetness out of there. I'm covered in powder again. I'm just going to put my mixing hook on. And I'm going to put my wet ingredients in here and mix them together. It just saves you a little time and hassle to do it that way. So to this, I want to add my 7 egg yolks. I've got a cup of oil here. I'm using avocado oil. You can use any oil that you want to. Coconut oil will probably be really good in here. It just blends up the flavor of the coconut. If you don't want your bread tasting so coconutty, don't use it, obviously. You could probably use olive oil too, but I find with olive oil, it tends to lend flavor to the stuff that you put it in. Alright, in here I get 2/3 of a cup of almond milk. But the almond milk I have is actually this Califia Farms one, and it's an almond milk, but coconut almond milk blend. So if you see that, I figured the flavors would work really well with the coconut flour bread, and I wasn't disappointed with it. Alright guys, so that is it for the wet ingredients. I'm going to put them in here and turn them on to mix it up really good. Alright, so the wet ingredients are all mixed together. I'm going to add my dry to the wet and mix them together again. Alright, let's get mixing. Alright, so I've scraped down the sides and cleaned off my mixing powder. That only took about a minute to mix together. And a word to the wise, most of you are probably intelligent enough that you already knew this, but I was impatient, and so not today, but a couple weeks ago, I turned it on, I had to put the powder in there with the wet, just cranked it up, impatient for it to mix together, and poof, powdery substance was all over my kitchen like somebody dropped a sack of flour in here. So, FYI, start it off slow till it gets pre-incorporated, then you can speed up a little bit more, but don't just crank it up. Bad idea. Alright, so that's mixed together. So what we're going to do now is we are going to very gently fold in our egg whites that we beat. We carefully beat them to be nice stiff peaks. And you're going to try and keep those, as much air pockets in those egg whites as possible while slowly incorporating them in. This takes a few minutes of delicate work with your spatula, but it's worth it, I promise. I'm running out of room on my counter. I need more space. That's more like it. Okay. So I'm going to just start gently folding these in. And as I thought, if you wanted to make this a little bit sweeter, like a breakfast bread or something, you can always add a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, maybe even some nutmeg to it, just to punch up the flavor a little bit. But we mainly use this for sandwich bread, so I was trying to keep the sweet flavors out of it. That's not a bad idea. Toast that up in the morning, still go with some butter. Alright, so it's taken me a minute or two, but I've gotten all those egg whites folded in there very gently. So here I already have greased up a 9x5 loaf pan, but if you do have a smaller loaf pan, you can try putting this in there. It'll just probably rise up above it. I don't think it'll overfill it. Or you can have this recipe, but the loaf will be significantly shorter. I like my loaves taller so we can make good sandwich bread out of them. I've also preheated my oven to 375 behind me because we're getting ready to pop this in, okay? So now we're just going to transfer this to the loaf pan. Alright, we've gotten all of our dough transferred over to the loaf pan now. What we're going to do is we're not going to smooth this flat. You don't want to do that because then you'll have a flat loaf that just doesn't look as nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently smooth this off and round it towards the center to give it that pretty loaf shape. But you want it to be nice and smooth and rounded on top. Now guys, I'm not a baker, okay? Before I went keto, I've never baked a loaf of bread in my life. So if you know of other ways to do this that's better or more efficient, please share your tips and tricks with me because I am still learning. I learn something new every day. But through making this bread, I found that this works absolutely terrific every time I do it this way. So make it nice and smooth on top. And if you wanted to top this with anything, now is the perfect time to do that. You can use ground flax seeds, sesame seeds, whatever you prefer. You know, sunflower seeds. You can sprinkle it on the top of this and bake it into it. Like I don't. I know I've mentioned this before, but my daughter has braces, and adding extra stuff like that to it tends to get stuck in her braces, and that can be quite embarrassing when she's at school. So we just avoid that whole situation. All right, there it is. I've got nice and rounded on top. It comes up to about an inch below the top of the pan, which is exactly where I wanted it. So I'm going to stick this in the oven. In my oven, it normally cooks around 45-50 minutes. Your oven might be slightly different. Again, that is at 375. So I'm going to pop it in for 45 minutes and check it. And I'll be back with you guys in a little bit, let you know how long it cooked for. I'll see you guys soon. All right, lovelies, we are back. And this just came out of the oven. It's piping hot. If you can see, it actually raised just beyond the lip of the pan, which is what I wanted. I didn't want a little 2-inch loaf of bread because it doesn't make much of a sandwich, but this makes a really good sandwich. Now, if you are using a smaller pan and you want to cut the recipe down, maybe to half or something like that, make sure that when you cook it, you only cook it for about 25 to 30 minutes. If you cook it for 45 minutes, you'll overcook it, okay? One tip is do not open your oven door while it's cooking. Resist the temptation. I promise you, it'll help it to cook better, won't fall flat on you. And this one will not fall flat. I have not had it ever fall flat on me the last 3 times I made it. But I do need to let it cool a little bit so I can pop it out of the pan. I'll slice it for you and show you what it looks like. See you guys back in a few more minutes. Alright, so this bread has cooled down enough. I've turned it out of the pan and it looks quite lovely. Look at that. One thing about this bread though is you do want to let it cool a good bit before you cut it. If you do not let it cool, it'll kind of crumble up on you and fall apart, so give it that time to rest. What I generally do with this is when I make the bread, I'll turn it onto the counter, cover it with a dishcloth, and then leave it overnight on the counter to cool off. That way whenever I come out the next day, I'll slice it, put it in a Tupperware container, or put it in the fridge. Because this is coconut flour bread, it is more moist, and if you leave it sitting on the counter like I do with my other bread, this will go rancid real fast and start growing mold on you. But when you put it in a Tupperware and put it in the fridge, I found that last week, actually this week, I made it Monday, and today we ate the last 2 pieces of it. So it's good for those 5 days out of the fridge, and it lasts exactly a week, so it's perfect. It worked out well. But I want to slice this for you so you can see what it looks like on the inside. Alright, so that is all cut up. I got 15 slices out of this one, and I'm not the best bread slicer in the world, so some of them are a little thicker, some a little thinner, but you'll get probably anywhere from 14 to 16 slices out of this. And just show you what it looks like on the inside. There we go. It's very pretty. I like it. It's a very wonderful tasting bread. It does not taste eggy. A lot of the ones I tried, they're very dense, very eggy, and this one's not. It's actually very sweet. It tastes kind of like wheat bread that we're used to from back in the day. It's just a little bit more wet. Alright guys, that is it for this. I'm going to let this cool just a little bit longer so there's no more moisture really coming off of it. I'll store it in a Tupperware in the refrigerator. And this will last at least a good 5 days in my experience in the fridge. If you try this bread out, please let me know. I'd love to hear what you think about it. If this video is helpful to you, please remember to give me a thumbs up down below. It helps other people to find my channel as well. And share this recipe with anybody that you know can use a good coconut flour bread recipe. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.